the days went on, Devin Booker was involved. Tell me you've seen the clip of Devin Booker when I can't remember who his opponent was.
Or the Hammer Show.
At the end, it's because I worked in the NBA in the front office, and when I was 14 years old, my family moved back from Sudan to America. I went up high school here in New York
Find these
City.
and more NBA podcasts right here on TuneIn.
Want to relive the glory of college football?
Balls over a man, into the end zone.
Come explore TuneIn's classic game replay collection to hear ESPN's complete coverage of the 2019 New Year's 6 bowl games. Don't miss your chance to re-experience the Rose Bowl, the 2020 National Championship, featuring Clemson and LSU.
There's going to be 2 champions on the field tomorrow night. There's going to be 1 team hold up the trophy.
10, right to the 5, touchdown! Search classic game replays to listen for free.
Get your MLB fix with these great podcasts on TuneIn. Fill your 7th inning stretch with the Ringer MLB Show.
I just can't get over it. It's like, well, Jeter Downs didn't realize he was a top. Like, my dad is drinking the Kool-Aid on this. He's like, of course, Mookie was going to leave. I'm like, what do you mean? You don't know that.
Slide into second with the Starting 9 podcast.
Nolan Arenado slides right into the top spot for a favorite baseball player. Active in the league right now. It is a pleasure to be sitting next to you, sir.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Thank you.
This is we've been waiting a long time for this. We actually, in terms of like active
Round the bases with the Statcast podcast.
Ways of going about it. I picked third, so in some ways it made it easier for me. Mike just to go over the first couple of picks. Mike took Barry Bonds, who I think was kind of the obvious guy to take number 1. Not only
catch these and more MLB podcasts right here on TuneIn.
To help make the most of your time at home, TuneIn is sharing our top activities for social distancing. Tip number 5, cooking something. We all get stuck in a culinary rut with our normal routine. Shake things up in the kitchen by trying an ambitious new recipe or an over-the-top dessert. If cooking really isn't your thing, you can always support your local restaurants by ordering out. For more indoor inspiration, search Listen From Home on TuneIn.
New York, Bloomberg 1130. To Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 99.1. To Boston, Bloomberg 106.1. To San Francisco, Bloomberg 960. To the country, Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
Well, coming up, we're going to talk airlines. Delta coming out with their numbers. What do they tell us about the industry, the company, and the future of air travel? George Ferguson from BI is going to be along to answer those questions. First, Charlie Pellet's going to answer all our questions about the trade. Hey, Charlie.
Well, here's what's going on. We've got the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ. They're all rebounding today. Sharp contrast from yesterday. Let's begin with crude oil. That is the standout with West Texas Intermediate crude surging 21% today, now at $14.03 a barrel. Part of that, heightened tensions with Iran. We've got the 10-year down 17.30 seconds. The yield there, 0.62%. Gold up 1.7%, 17.14 the ounce. You mentioned some of the airline names. Delta, for example, after earnings, down now by 3.3%. UAL down 8%, taking out those middle seats. We've got American down 7%. Southwest dropping today by 1.5%. The Dow up 463 points, up by 2%. S&P up 64, a gain there of 2.4%. NASDAQ up now by 239, higher by 2.9%. One of the big challenges for health professionals in fighting COVID-19 is increasing the number of tests and getting those tests to the right people and places. Dr. Lawrence Sauer is a professor of emergency medicine at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health.
Testing is going to be critical to ending this lockdown, and then you link that testing with quick access to care, contact tracing, which is identifying people who had contact with people who are sick, and making sure that they stay isolated or quarantined if they're not sick until they pass their possible window of getting others sick.
The Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health is supported by Michael R. Bloomberg, founder of Bloomberg LP and Bloomberg Philanthropies. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin says he anticipates most of the U.S. economy will restart by the end of August after the coronavirus has led to social distancing measures that have shuttered many businesses. He made the comment this morning on Fox Business. Netflix says the explosive growth in subscribers it posted last quarter, the strongest in its history, may not last beyond the stay-at-home home orders. We've got Netflix shares trading lower. Netflix down today by 1.65%. Also after earnings, Snap surging up today by 31.9%. Again, recapping stocks higher. S&P up 66 now, up 2.4%. I'm Charlie Pelleton. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week, and you heard Charlie break down some of the airline numbers. All eyes on Delta this morning, obviously, and some pretty staggering numbers. It's one of those things, Carol, that you think, wow, this is going to be pretty bad. And then it is, and you just think, oh, this is a tough business, especially for a company that, by all accounts, had been doing very well over the past few years. We had spent some time with Ed Bastian, the CEO there, just last year, and he was telling, obviously, a very different story. George Ferguson joins us, Senior Aerospace, Defense, and Airlines Analyst for Bloomberg Intelligence, on the phone from Princeton. All right, so George, amid all of the numbers, what's the most important thing we need to take away from the numbers from Delta and the commentary?
Well, good afternoon. I think the most important number we have to take away is that they're going to push hard to get expenses down and only burn $50 million a day by the beginning of May. And we think they'll consume $4.5 to $5.5 billion during second quarter. And so right now, really this business is all about trying to survive through the coronavirus effects here to some other side that we don't know when. We got to get people comfortable with flying again. We don't know if we need a vaccine. We don't know if we need to put dividers between seats, but we got to survive in order to get to the point where we can put people on airplanes in much larger size so they can make money. They say demand is bouncing along the bottom. They want to finish the end of 2Q with $10 billion, which would let them burn that kind of cash for 2 more quarters and make it to the end of the year.
So they've applied Delta specifically for a $4.6 billion loan from the U.S. government rescue package, but they might not accept it, I guess, what's being offered, because the Treasury would get some equity or at least some warrants in exchange for a loan. Should they just do that?
Yeah, I think they're all using that as an option here, right? And so one of the restrictions to the loan, not the grant package, but the loan package, is the loan can go out 5 years, but for the term of the loan plus an additional year, the company cannot buy back shares, pay a dividend, and it lives with caps on pay. And so I think what they're all doing is I think it's a great thing, I guess. They're looking past coronavirus and they're thinking, what if we get into a world here where things resume somewhat close to normal? We right-size the business. We're making money. We can't buy back shares. We can't pay a dividend. That might unduly restrict us. We might not be able to attract investors like another airline that could get through there. And Delta said, look, they've got, I forget what timetable they gave, but I think they've got to the end of the quarter or something like that in order to actually take the loan. Look, I think if things look like we think they're going to look like at the end of 2Q, meaning not much better, I think they will just go ahead and take those loans.
And hearing what they said, George, from a consumer perspective, obviously an investor perspective, but just from the perspective of people like get on planes for business trips and family trips and things like that, what do you hear across the industry about how soon this industry looks at least somewhat healthy again? Obviously, it's unknowable largely, but what are you extrapolating from what you hear from these guys?
And don't you love how he's not using the word normal? Because I don't think anybody expects normal for a while.
There's no normal.
Yeah, agreed. So, I think we're all the analyst community, I think everybody that surrounds the airlines, and I'm sure inside the airlines are just not talking to us about it as much as are sort of, wargaming that out in our heads. Like, how do we get people comfortable getting back on an airplane? And even Ed Bastian mentioned today about a vaccine, which, is potentially a long way off, right? It's sometime into next year. And I think everybody's thinking about taking out seats or, blocking out seats or using masks or things like that. But look, I think it's just hard to imagine demand coming back strongly before you can really get people comfortable getting on an airplane. And I think it's a vaccine because, last time I checked, the middle seat wasn't 6 feet wide when last time I was on an airplane.
Exactly.
It's been a while now, but I think that's the $1 million. And even if you take the middle seats out, It's like a typical narrow-body airplane. You've got sort of 6 rows, 3 and 3 on each side. The airlines are flying at 66% full. They typically can't make money at that level.
Right.
So,
Do you envision just 20 seconds that we maybe are wearing like some kind of helmet or something? No, to get on a plane.
I think people are wargaming everything, and that's something they're thinking about. Maybe not a helmet, maybe the face mask that's already on the airplane.
Yeah.
Interesting.
That's
interesting.
True.
Wow. Amazing. All right. Well, we appreciate your context as always, especially on such a busy day. George Ferguson, Senior Aerospace, Defense, and Airlines Analyst for Bloomberg Intelligence, joining us on the phone from New Jersey. And as he said, just huge, billion dollar questions that these guys are going to have to answer. We're all going to have to answer.
Right. And those international flights, which are the more expensive flights where they make money, are not happening. Spain's parliament, by the way, voting to extend the lockdown through May 9th. That was a headline that just crossed the Bloomberg.
All right, let's get some world and national headlines from Bob Moon. Hey, Bob.
Jason, thank you. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo says in order for his state to reopen safely, there needs to be a way to trace people who may have come into contact or who have contracted COVID-19. Governor Cuomo, in his daily news conference today, said the state is getting help from former New York City Mayor Mike Bloomberg.
Mayor Michael Bloomberg has volunteered to help us develop and implement the tracing program.
Michael R. Bloomberg is, of course, the founder of Bloomberg LP, the owner of this radio station, and Bloomberg Philanthropy. 2 pet cats in the state of New York have tested positive for the coronavirus, marking the first confirmed cases in companion animals in the U.S. The Department of Agriculture and the Federal Centers for Disease Control and Prevention announced the finding today. The agencies say the cats had mild respiratory illnesses and are thought to have contracted the virus from people. President Trump has told the U.S. Navy to destroy any Iranian gunboats if they harass our ships at sea. This a week after the Navy reported a group of Iranian boats made dangerous and harassing approaches to American vessels in the Persian Gulf. Bloomberg's Irv Chapman has the story.
The Vice Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General John Hyten, told the Pentagon News Conference that commanding officers know what they have to do to protect their crews.
If we see a hostile act, if we see hostile intent, we have the right to respond up to and including lethal force if necessary, but nobody should doubt that the commanders have the authority right now to respond to any hostile act or hostile intent.
General Hyten said he's glad the president warned an adversary that its threats would be countered. In Washington,
not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. I came out in the 11th grade. Nobody was embracing you. The kids were cruel. It was very difficult to be gay. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma. The hard part was determining that I was going to do it, but I definitely didn't do it alone.
At age 30, with the help of her mentor, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
I have a mentor, Maria. She convinced me to continue my education and to finish what I started to get my diploma. Just never judges. She's a true role model. If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, go get it. You can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their business strategically. Yet, the most competitive managers in the market know, with the right partner and a flexible operating platform, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm Steve Meyer, President, Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seizechange.
Are you interested in a challenging and exciting...
TuneIn makes it easy to be a part of the conversation. Just make sure push notifications are enabled to hear about breaking news and trending topics from around the sports world. You'll also get custom recommendations of podcasts and radio stations covering the sports and teams you care about. Get ready for the 2020 NFL Draft with TuneIn.
Do your homework on this year's top prospects, rising stars, and late-round sleepers with football podcasts like Move the Sticks.
Is my pick because I know he is an athletic freak, a guy that is capable of doing it all. He can blitz, he can run, he can cover.
And when the draft gets underway on April 23rd, follow every round and every pick for free.
In the 2018 NFL. It's always football season on TuneIn.
Be part of the college sports conversation on TuneIn. Hear the latest storylines around SEC football with the Paul Feinbaum Show.
I distinctly remember when you were hired, and I must say most of us thought you were out of your mind, giving up. I wouldn't call it a cush job because you were traveling across the country.
Get your college hoops fix with college basketball talk on NBC Sports.
Headed by Shabazz Napier, that also included Amita Brima, who is in and around the NBA ranks right now, and DeAndre Daniels, who was the 37th pick in the 2014 NBA draft. So my question to you is...
Or listen to the daily news from around the wide world of college football with College Football Live.
I would go with Utah. I think Utah is the better team. And I know I'm talking to an Oklahoma guy, but listen, and it may be recency bias having watched Utah last week and doing that game, but I just think they're a more complete football.
Discover these and more college sports podcasts right here on TuneIn.
Hey, it's Jacoby here from Jalen and Jacoby, and after you watch The Last Dance on ESPN, which you're obviously going to do just like the rest of us stuck in our homes in quarantine, you can join Jalen Rose and I for Jalen and Jacoby, The After Show. And we will be joined by the director of the documentary series, Jason Eyre, to discuss each episode in detail. You can hear our After Show right here on ESPN Radio on Sunday nights after the episodes air, and they'll be available on the Jalen and Jacoby podcast feed.
Search Jalen and Jacoby to listen today.
Wi-Fi connection spotty? Make sure you're never without something to listen to by offlining your podcasts on TuneIn. Just tap the three dots to download the episodes you want to hear. You'll find your offlined audio under your favorites.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Get your MLB fix with these great podcasts on TuneIn. Fill your seventh inning stretch with the Ringer MLB Show.
I just can't get over it. It's like, oh, well, Jeter Downs. Didn't realize he was a top. Like, my dad is drinking the Kool-Aid on this. He's like, of course. Mookie was going to leave. I'm like, what do you mean? You don't know that.
Slide into second with the Starting Nine podcast.
Nolan Arenado slides right into the top spot for favorite baseball player. Active in the league right now. It is a pleasure to be sitting next to you, sir.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Thank you.
This is we've been waiting a long time for this. We actually, in terms of like active
round the bases with the Statcast podcast.
Ways of going about it. I picked third, so in some ways it made it easier for me. Mike, just to go over the first couple of picks. Mike took Barry Bonds, who I think was kind of the obvious guy to take number one. Not only
catch these and more MLB podcasts right here on TuneIn.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
News 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pelleto. Rally underway with the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all surging by 2.2% or better. Right now, we've got the S&P up 68. That is a gain of 2.5%. Stocks are halting a two-day slide as investors digest the latest round of corporate earnings. Also, optimism about the eventual reopening of the economy is increasing. We've got the Dow up 502. That's a gain of 2.2%. NASDAQ up 250 for NASDAQ. That's an advance right now of 3%. 10-year down 16.30 seconds. The yield there of 0.62%. Gold is up 1.8%. 17.16 the ounce. Big surge in crude oil today. West Texas Intermediate rallying $2.35 a barrel, up 20.4%. Now at $13.93 for a barrel of West Texas Intermediate crude. So again, seeing a big surge in crude oil today. Sharp contrast to Monday's plunge, pointing to crude's inelasticity. We've got more on that coming up in just a moment. This is Bloomberg. I'm Charlie Pellet. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
That's a perfect setup. That's exactly what we're going to talk about. I mean, understandably, Jason, right, we've talked a lot about the moves in the oil market and the reasons why we've seen such dramatic drops. But Bloomberg Business Week economics editor Peter Coy, he writes this week in the magazine that the historic crash in oil prices that we saw on Monday to below zero, believe it or not, can be explained with one wonky word. Charlie Pellet said it, inelasticity. We've got Peter joining us on the phone from New Jersey. So, Peter, good to have you here with us. I feel like your story is one of those stories we've talked a lot about the energy markets, but you really explain it well, why we are in today's current situation. It's not like this is something that just happened seemingly overnight. It was kind of long in coming. Tell us a little bit about what you wrote about.
Well, first, thanks to Charlie Pellet for that great segue.
Oh, what a setup.
Good. He's amazing.
Yeah, so inelasticity is one of those terms that you learn in intro econ, which is the idea that for certain products, the prices, the demand and supply do not adjust very much in response to a change in the price. And oil is a perfect example of that in the short term. So, look on the demand side, COVID-19 pandemic, the price of gasoline has plunged. But how many people are filling up their tanks these days? Practically nobody, because we're not driving. And so the demand for gasoline has not responded to the fall in prices. Meanwhile, on the supply side, you're not seeing supply falling in response to the decline in price. Somewhat, yes. You see, across the shale fields, producers cutting back, but Saudi Arabia and Russia are still producing far more than the market will bear. The cuts in production have not matched the decline in demand. Now, usually what happens in a case like that is that more oil goes into inventory. That's kind of the buffer. But what's happening now is we've run out of room to store, and that's why we're getting these extreme moves.
Well, and that storage, as you point out in your story, I'm glad you brought that up, because that seems to be, or it is, it's not that it seems to be, that's really what's happening here, that this has gone on for so long. There's literally no place to put it. It's one of these things where I'm sure that people look at the complexities of the financial system and global trading and things like that, and they say, well, surely it can't be that simple, and it kind of actually is, except that geopolitics obviously have entered into this as well. You mentioned Russia and Saudi Arabia. So what are we to do about this? And
but wait, can I just jump in for a second? Because part of this too is it's usually futures contracts, right, Peter, that are traded, and you never expect to actually take the physical delivery of oil. That's not usually how the markets work, the futures markets. But that's what's right.
Yeah, so it depends. There are different rules for different contracts. For the Brent crude, which is North Sea, that's settled in cash. The vast majority of contracts for West Texas Intermediate on the NYMEX are also settled in cash. But if you own a contract to receive oil and you have not managed to sell it before the deadline, then you have to take it. And, of course, the joke is, where are you going to put it, in your garage?
Right.
So what ends up happening is that the seller will arrive at a punitive deal with you. You'd have to pay through the nose to wriggle out of the contract because you're basically violating its terms. And that's why we saw oil on Monday go to negative $36-something a barrel. This was people who were totally desperate to get out of their contracts so they wouldn't be put into that squeeze.
And so what happens next here? I mean, you, as you often point out to us, you're not an economist, but you are. You play one on
Bloomberg Business Week.
You are an expert on the world of economics. I mean, I guess synthesize this into the rest of what we're seeing, because also, by the way, we're in the midst of a global pandemic.
Yeah, so the June contract, I talked to the guy named Steve Shork. I quote him in my story, from Pennsylvania. He's been in the market for years. He was looking at how much higher the price of June oil was than May oil, saying that can't last. June has got to come down.
Right.
And he's right, it has come down. And I would not be surprised if, as we get closer to the expiration of the June contract, we're going to see much the same kind of craziness because it's very unlikely that between now and then, which would be the beginning of May, we're going to, or let's see, sort of late in May, that we will see the change in the supply and demand conditions. We're not going to see people buying a lot more gasoline because COVID's not going away, and it's just going to be really, really difficult for producers to cut their production enough to stop putting it into storage.
So is this the beginning of the end of the oil market?
No, obviously not the end of the oil market. We're going to have oil, but it's the beginning. It's not only the beginning of the end; it's the end for a lot of speculators who are getting wiped out here. They made some really bad decisions, and a lot of them are, by the way, people who decided to go into exchange traded funds because they figured, oil prices got to go up from here. They're getting killed as the one contract rolls over into another.
So maybe I should ask: is it the end of the oil age?
Into the oil age. Now that's a more profound question. In a way, we've accelerated the transition out of the oil age, which was coming anyway, right? And once this happens, we're certainly going to have still demand for oil, but this is waking people up to the fact that you don't want to be investing a lot in new oil production now when this kind of thing can come along and slam you.
Well, and it's interesting, too, that ETF element of it. We talked about that at the top of the show with our own Kriti Gupta, who follows these markets so closely. I mean, I love the kicker quote in your story. I just want to read it. Some might consider an event that happens 0.25% of the time to be too improbable to worry about. However, ask yourself this. I cannot get this image out of my head. How well will you sleep tonight if you know that once every year or two, someone is going to wake you up by dropping a tarantula on your face? Wow. That is
what it feels
scary
like,
as
right?
heck.
Yeah, that's a lot of people these days feel like that tarantula just landed on their face.
Yeah,
feels like it's happening more often, though, man.
Yeah, more than a year or two. But I do think
of the market.
But it does speak to a broader thing that I think we're all thinking about, which is: are we entering a new era of much more, regular uncertainty, if that's such a thing, Peter? And I know it's something that you spend a lot of time thinking about from an economics perspective, because there's academics and then there's reality.
I have to say that very few people saw that we would have oil at negative $36-something a barrel. So there's an example of a black swan event. I tend to shy away from the idea that there's more uncertainty now than there ever has been, because I think it's a lot of because we don't know what's going to happen next. When you look back in history and say, well, it was obvious that we were going to have 9/11 or whatever else. No, it wasn't at the time. It came as a shock to us.
It did. All right, we got to go. Sorry, Peter. We love you. Thank you so much. For those of you listening in New York, San Francisco, watching on YouTube.
News without analysis is like half a...
Oh, just there, Dave. Smashing. Great. Really? Night, Steve.
Yeah, see ya.
Built to take the big knocks. Samsung rugged devices. Easy to use, hard to break. Explore the Samsung rugged range.
Okay, people, I've got the daily checklist. Who today has eaten dinner for breakfast? Tick. Started a chore you'll never finish? Tick. Done a conference call in your pajamas? Tick. Here's another for your list. BritBox. Streaming the BBC, ITV, Channel 5, and now Channel 4. All in one place and ad-free. So add BritBox to your list and get a 30-day free trial of the biggest box of British box sets. Search BritBox free trial. Tick. Biggest compared to other SVOD providers. Auto renews at $5.99 a month unless cancelled. T's and C's apply.
This is a message from the government. Coronavirus is a national emergency, life-threatening for people of all ages everywhere in the UK. To help save lives, stay home. Only go outside for food, health reasons, daily exercise, or to work, but only if you cannot work from home. Stay home. Anyone can get it, and anyone can spread it. Coronavirus. Stay home, protect the NHS, save lives.
Did you know that with TuneIn's local radio feature, you can stream live FM and AM stations broadcasting in your area? Discover local news, talk, and music stations. Navigate to the local radio section under Browse to listen locally on TuneIn.
Hey, it's Jacoby here from Jalen and Jacoby. And after you watch The Last Dance on ESPN, which you're obviously going to do just like the rest of us stuck in our homes in quarantine, you can join Jalen Rose and I for Jalen and Jacoby, The After Show. And we will be joined by the director of the documentary series, Jason Eyre, to discuss each episode in detail. You can hear our After Show right here on ESPN Radio on Sunday nights after the episodes air. And they'll be available on the Jalen and Jacoby podcast feed.
Search Jalen and Jacoby to listen today.
Hey, y'all, we're taking the Marty Party to a whole new level with the Marty Smith's America podcast with Gerald McCoy.
I truly believe that Carolina made a mistake letting Cam go. This is not a personal shot at Teddy Bridgewater. This could have been Andy Dalton. This could have been whoever they brought in. Cam has so much left. Somebody's really getting a great one, man. And I don't think people really understand what they're getting.
Search Marty Smith America to listen.
At Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. We move into the final hour of trading. We've got the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ at or near session highs. Stocks have halted a two-day slide as investors digest the latest round of corporate earnings. And there is optimism about the eventual reopening of the U.S. economy. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin says he anticipates most of the U.S. economy will restart by the end of August after the coronavirus led to social distancing measures that have shuttered many businesses. Mnuchin made the comment on Fox Business. So what lessons can be learned about the potential U.S. economic rebound from what's happening now in China as it reopens? Brian Levitt is senior investment strategist at Invesco.
You can look for signs there, whether it's electricity use or even, we look at Yum Brands, we look at KFC, we look at, the number of stores being reopened and the fried chicken being sold. So you get some signs. I'm not ready to declare an all clear, but obviously they're kind of a first in, first out sort of example right now.
He mentioned Yum Brand shares up now by 6.1%. The oil market continues to hold investor attention. Brent crude slumping to a two-decade low before rebounding. West Texas Intermediate crude surging above $14 a barrel after President Trump ordered the Navy to destroy any Iranian gunboats that harass American ships at sea. West Texas Intermediate crude up now by 22% at $14.12 a barrel. Among some of the oil majors today, ExxonMobil shares, they are higher by 2.9%. Chevron is up by 3.5%. ConocoPhillips advancing now by 5.3%. LB shares are plunging. That is the parent of Victoria's Secret. Sycamore Partners wants to terminate its deal to acquire a controlling stake in Victoria's Secret, according to a court filing. Shares of limited brands LB lower now by 23.5%. Tenured on 15-30 seconds, yield 0.61%. We've got gold up 1.7%, $17.15 the ounce. Recapping, stocks higher, S&P up 68. That's a gain of 2.5%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
This is Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Mazur and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
And you are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Let's do a little Business Week economics. Kathleen Hayes joining us, Global Economics and Policy Editor for Bloomberg. Joining us from the Poconos, Carl Riccadonna, Chief U.S. Economist for Bloomberg Economics. Joining us from New Jersey. Carl Riccadonna, I want to start with you. First of all, I kind of miss you. I haven't talked to you in a while. How you been?
No, you're just up the block. I think about you. I was walking the dog this morning. I'm like, hi, Carl.
I'm just a phone call away. But
don't get near him.
But don't ring the doorbell.
Yeah,
I will not. I promise.
Wear a mask.
You're in my thoughts.
But Carl, give us the thing that's top of mind for you right now. I mean, we've got data, we've got so many things swirling around. I do wonder, and we sometimes ask you this, find the signal in the noise for us here. What are you zeroing in on?
Will it be weekly jobless claims?
Well, the challenge at the moment is trying to figure out what a second half recovery looks like when we really don't understand the full scope of the decline that is currently underway and, in fact, accelerating. So until the eye of the hurricane has really passed over, it's hard to determine how severe the storm is going to be. And so that's what we're grappling with at the moment, trying to understand the extent of contraction. And if we look on the Bloomberg terminal, right, we submit our own team's forecast, but there's a wide range of economics projections, and there seems to be a race to the bottom for worse and worse projections for the first half contraction. I think, and again, Carol spoiled the joke, as she always does. I
She's
think,
the worst.
Thanks, buddy.
You always hurt the ones you love, Carol.
I know.
One of the most important gauges to understanding when the bottom is coming into view is going to be that weekly jobless claims series. It's so timely. It doesn't get significant revisions after the fact. And so it really tells us how much of the labor force is coming offline. And if we assume every worker is accountable for a certain share of GDP, then we can kind of make a rough back-of-the-envelope calculation of how bad that contraction will be. That means we need to see claims moving into a downtrend. And I suspect maybe what we saw last week was more of a reflection that the Good Friday holiday, meaning labor offices were closed, simply meant fewer applications were processed. It was not a sign that there was a light at the end of the tunnel. So that will be, without a doubt, the most important economic indicator to watch tomorrow and over the next few weeks.
Yeah, I was reading your research on the terminal about just that. Kathleen Hayes, come on in on the access line from the Poconos. What do you think is the one thing folks need to know today about the bond market?
Well, just that it's yields are still very low, even with a bit of a sell-off. You've got the 10-year note, as Charlie Pellet just told us, a half-point loss in the price. But, 0.61, still pretty low. But the recent low is something like 0.36. 30-year bond down 1.5. But that only takes the yield to 1.21. I mean, you've had this huge rally in bonds. Yes, stocks are higher today. I think there's still a lot of uncertainty. We're watching earnings. We're watching all these things. We've got big central bank meetings next week. And, Federal Reserve is on, we get the decision on Wednesday, U.S. We get the BOJ Tuesday, U.S. We get the ECB Thursday, so the big three are all meeting. What are they going to do? What are they going to say? It's probably going to have a lot of focus on their emergency lending programs. And for the ECB, it's buying up debt so that individual European countries don't have to let their taxpayers see how much they're building up their debts and deficits, too. I think in terms of the U.S. economy, I like what Carl said just now about there's this race to the bottom to have the worst economic forecast for growth. It does seem I can be more negative than you. Truth of the matter is we know things are weak. We know they're getting weaker. We don't know yet how long it's going to take. It was interesting to hear the Treasury Secretary say by the end of the summer, the whole economy will be out of lockdown, he seemed to say, and we can be back on the road. Now, that's why it seems to me that the governors staggering this makes sense. New York, where we basically live and work, is maybe going to be the last one because the coronavirus hit so hard. I just think that, right now, I think if you're an investor, it's really hard to know what more should I do? Where do I go? Or do I just sit tight for a while, see how long it takes for the oil market to shake out and settle down, see how the earnings come out, and see if the numbers for the economy don't just come in bad, but seem to tell us there's a downward spiral, that this is building on itself and everything the lockdown is causing is kind of growing and getting worse. That's what I don't think most people are forecasting that. A lot of people see second half recovery, including the Fed, but I think that's probably the biggest risk.
Well, and Carl, pick up on something that Kathleen said that I think is really important, which is this notion of it's uneven throughout the country. And I do wonder, as you talk to your team about trying to go that level down to the state level and maybe even down to specific municipalities, because New York City is very different from Rochester, Syracuse, or Albany. Even within the state of New York, similar things happening in California. How do you sort of model that, or can you?
Well, we have to do our best to try to model that, those differences geographically, and often we can just look at the size of the population, right? All of North Dakota can basically live south of 14th Street in Manhattan, if I remember that statistic correctly, right? So it really is going to depend on looking at the kind of 10 largest states in terms of population, and then seeing what is happening in those states. No disrespect to the Rhode Islands and smaller states, but really New York, California, Florida, Pennsylvania, Michigan, those are the states that are going to be the important bellwethers of the degree to which we're coming back online. And another way of tracking the economy is to simply look at tax collections.
Yeah.
And so if we look at the withheld portion of your paycheck, we can see, I'm looking at the Bloomberg terminal right now, they're down about 4% compared to this time last year. So it's a noisy series, but it does tell us that the economy is in an accelerating contraction at the moment.
Well, you can certainly hear the stress in governors' voices because they are looking at those tax receipts and what's going on in their economies. Carl Riccadonna, thank you as always. Chief U.S. economist, my neighbor up the street at Bloomberg Economics. On the phone from New Jersey, Kathleen Hayes, global economics and policy editor at Bloomberg News, on the phone from the Poconos. Let's head to New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy giving an update on the virus.
Is a good starting point. New hospitalizations dropped yesterday, but that just means we had good news for one day in a row. Let's hope it stays that way. We also need to see this number begin a sustained decrease. This is and will remain perhaps our most important measure of progress, as the rate of new hospitalizations has a direct correlation to the number of new positive test results. And finally, we see the number of discharges versus the number of new admittances. Today, the lines are intersecting again with more discharges than admittances. And that's a good thing. These last three charts are all very real numbers. They are not estimates or abstracts. This is the reality that our 71 hospitals are living right now. I've come back to the point several times in the past several days. This data is invaluable to us because it measures in real terms the ability of our healthcare system to be able to get ahead of COVID-19 and then to stay ahead of it. And again, I want to come back to positive test results. And again, the women to my right have forgotten more than I'll ever know. We're testing, I think we're the fourth highest tested state in America. We are testing more and more each and every day. But it is not a definitive answer as to the question, and no one knows this right now, how many folks in total may be infected. We don't know that. We can guess, but we don't know that. We know to the person how many people are hospitalized, how many people are in the ICU, how many ventilators are in use, and sadly, how many people are passing because of COVID-19. Those are the hard, fast, realistic, and at times, sadly, all too often, grim numbers. Those are real. Those are real, and that's the basis upon which Judy and team make a lot of the decisions, and we do as we look forward to seeing where this is going to take us. As we look toward, for instance, a reopening strategy, which we are working on finalizing now, one of the first things we need to be prepared for is the spike in new cases that will surely come when we do reopen. We will continue to be data-driven as we prepare for what's to come. Our number one mission remains unchanged: to save lives, period. So this data isn't just invaluable in letting us and you know where things are today. It's also invaluable in telling us where we're headed in the future. However, as I noted, that future will come with fewer members of our New Jersey family with us, and we mourn with everyone who has lost a loved one due to COVID-19. I'd like to remember three more of those we've lost. John Caraccia. There's John. He was born in New York City, but called the Ford section of Woodbridge Township home for the past 40 years. For 3 decades, John worked for the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey at Newark Airport and the World Trade Center, retiring as operations supervisor in human services. Since his retirement, he remained active and was serving as the chief of the Woodbridge Township Ambulance and Rescue Squad. John was also active in the life of St. James Roman Catholic Church in Woodbridge. He's being remembered by his family, friends, and colleagues as, quote, a leader, teacher, and mentor. John was 74 years old. He leaves behind a big, incredible family. 2 daughters, Tony and Roseanne, and a son, John, with whom I had the honor of speaking yesterday afternoon, and in turn their families. He was blessed with 10 grandchildren and 3 great-grandchildren. He's also survived by his sister Pat and her family and his former wife Roseanne, and we keep all of them in our thoughts and prayers. God bless you, John. The next one, the guy who's known to many, Kevin Cardilla. Kevin was born in Newark, a high school football standout at Eastside High, earning all county, all city, and all state honors. He turned down the opportunity to go elsewhere for college ball and attended Rutgers University. And in his 4 years, the Scarlet Knights would go 32-13, and Kevin would earn a ticket to the Rutgers Hall of Fame.
And you've been listening to New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy there, giving the numbers and also remembering some residents of New Jersey who have lost their lives owing to COVID-19. He did sound a note of optimism, Carol. Hospitalizations falling pretty dramatically. I was seeing on Twitter the chart that he put out there, and we'll see if that's something that continues for sure.
Yeah, all right. We'll certainly continue to monitor the governor's comments and bring them to you in our news updates. Right now, though, let's get an update on the world of business and also check on the trading day. We've got about 45 minutes to go until that closing bell. Hi, Charlie Pellet.
Indeed. Best level of the day. Carol Massar with the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all rallying. Stocks halting a 2-day slide. Investors digesting the latest round of corporate earnings, and optimism about the eventual reopening of the economy increases. We've also got oil rising from record lows. Let's begin with West Texas Intermediate crude, up now by 21%, up $2.45 a barrel at $14.04 on WTI. Gold up 1.7%, $17.14 the ounce. The 10-year down 16.30 seconds. The yield on the 10-year 0.62%. As I mentioned, equities higher across the board here with the S&P up 68, up by 2.5%. The Dow up 512 points, up 2.2%. NASDAQ up now by 3%, higher by 246 points. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Well, Carol, a lot has been going on in Washington, to say the least. A lot of negotiations between the administration and members of Congress. Of course, we have a split Congress. We have the Democrats controlling the House and the Republicans controlling the Senate.
Yeah, absolutely. And we should point out that our Bloomberg Balance of Power host on Bloomberg TV and Radio, David Weston, caught up with the U.S. Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, to talk about that latest round of stimulus, Jason. Speaker Pelosi says the bill is expected to make its way through the House tomorrow. Let's listen in.
We will be able to, in a very strong bipartisan way, to pass the legislation as it passed in a bipartisan way in the Senate. It's nothing extraordinary about how we will vote. Pretty standard fare, but we will take a recorded vote. In the Senate, they had unanimous consent, so they need a few senators to be there. We're 430 members now, and we'll need to have a quorum and a majority to get it passed, but we will.
An awful lot in this bill, something like $370 billion to replenish the PPP program, including through some smaller lenders, $75 billion for hospitals, another $25 billion for testing. What is not in the bill that you think still needs to be done?
Well, first, let me just say how pleased I am with what is in the bill, and I thank you for the opportunity to do so. 2 weeks ago, the Secretary of Treasury called me and said he needed $250 billion in 48 hours. That would mean that by tomorrow, 2 weeks ago, the Republican leader went to the floor and said it's $250 for the program, and that's it. We're not making any other additions. We objected. The Democratic senators objected. We worked together for our proposal. They objected to that, made a counter proposal, which was resoundingly rejected by the Republicans. And for 1 week, they refused to negotiate until about last Thursday. Then they realized that they had no chance just to do the $250. There was so much more urgency, and in the bill, we of course support the $250. That was part of what we helped put together in the CARES Act. We support our small businesses, their entrepreneurial spirit, their optimism, their source of jobs and creation of wealth in our country. There was no question that we would be supporting that. but it took them a longer time than it should have to agree that we needed to make sure that even the smallest of small businesses would be included in that, and that we would be addressing our health needs because the key to our opening our economy, the key is testing, and we got $25 billion, as you mentioned, and the $75 billion to our hospitals for all the purposes that serves. And so finally, they agreed to the package we put on the floor at the time. In fact, we even did more. In addition, that we can move on to the next phase if you wish now.
Does this take care of the rescue part as opposed to recovery? In the past, you've talked about rescue versus recovery, and talk specifically about state assistance to state and local governments. Do you regard that as part of a rescue or recovery, and what are the prospects of getting that done?
Well, I was placed in 3 phases. First, emergency, and that's what we did in the first few bills that we passed in March in a strong bipartisan way. We started with testing on March 5th. Here we are a month and a half later, and the administration has still not fully implemented it. After this bill, hopefully they will. So that was part of recovery. And then we went into mitigation, to mitigate for the damage to the economy with these initiatives to protect our small businesses, to provide more assistance in terms of health care and the rest. And now we have to go further into mitigation, unfortunately, to help state and local. Now, state and local means this. It means the healthcare worker, the police and fire, the first responders, the emergency services people, the teachers in our schools, the transportation workers who get essential workers to work. Again, it's about the people. And these people are risking their lives to help save other lives, and now they're losing their jobs. So it's very essential that for our heroes, I call it our Heroes Act, that we have this assistance to state, county, local government, and to do so in a very significant way, to recognize the lost revenue that they have from lack of a stream of revenue because of the economy, and secondly, the outlays that they make in order to address the coronavirus.
All right, you were listening to U.S. Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi, of course, catching up with our David Weston, Bloomberg Balance of Power host on Bloomberg TV and Bloomberg Radio. And certainly we'll continue to follow that as that bill makes its way through the House. And we will assume, I think the assumption is it's ultimately going to get to the president's desk, that this is the next wave. But, you know, it's tricky. And this goes back to, I feel like, Jason, the conversation we had with Sean Donnan about, do we have the right data points to tell us exactly what's going on so that we can make sure we're creating the right policies? But I do think there's an understanding that that initial $2 trillion worth of stimulus didn't necessarily get to those really small businesses that needed it.
Well, that's exactly right. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that later in the show. Hannah Levitt has been tracking that very closely for the Bloomberg finance team and understanding the mechanics of it, the distribution of it, who's getting what. Of course, I feel like one of the almost memes that's going to come out of this is Shake Shack, right? And Shake Shack getting that money.
Or even Harvard right now. But as you dig into it, it's the government that decided what money, was just automatically allocated to various educational institutions. And I just want to go back to something Paul Krugman talked with us about yesterday, Nobel laureate. We're going to make some mistakes, and some people who probably shouldn't get money shouldn't, but let's just make sure we are blanketing enough money out there so that it does ultimately get to those people who need it.
Well, that's the thing, is you err on the side of maybe some people not getting money, not err on the side of like, well, I'm not so sure that this, dry cleaner really needs this money. And I also think, and this is something we'll ask Hannah about too, you do worry, and maybe I'm being a little too parochial thinking about Wall Street, but you do worry that maybe banks are going to make a little more money off of this than maybe people anticipated. Things get rushed, and maybe some things get built in. And listen, not to be too cynical about this, but there are a lot of strong Wall Street connections in this administration. By the way, there are strong Wall Street connections in every administration, so I'm not picking on them. If you go back to Obama, absolutely. You go back to Clinton, you go back to Bush. I mean, this is, they call it government sacks for a reason, and I'm not just picking on Goldman, but, the banks have a very... shall we say, friendly audience there. I mean, we saw at the very beginning of this, remember, when this was all going out, one of the first groups that met at the White House was a bunch of the banks.
And initially it was kind of like, yeah, everything's okay. We're okay.
Yeah.
We're liquid. We're doing okay. And it's like, wait a minute.
Hold on a second. And it's interesting too. Speaking of banks and speaking of companies, a great interview today on Bloomberg Television. I assume it's Eric Schatzker. I didn't see it, but just knowing how he rolls. Jeff Blau, the CEO of Related. Of course, we know them from their creation.
I think it might have been actually David Weston.
Oh, there you go, David Weston. Credit to David Weston. Then sorry. Related, of course, developer of Hudson Yards and of the Time Warner Center. Jeff Blau, the CEO there, is saying we're going to see a wave of defaults in New York City. And this is a city that there are a lot of small businesses.
Right.
Just walk through New York anytime, you see that.
Well, you think about these huge developments, right? They are not just a place to live. They are often a place to live, to work, to buy, to shop, to go out to dinner. And he specifically was saying that hotels and retail stores will be hit with a wave of defaults, right, as the virus really beats up the economy. And so he says that if landlords can't collect rents, the turmoil will soon cascade to banks. And this is where it becomes the health crisis becomes even more so that financial crisis. And the more that we get going, that if you're not paying your rent, on a small scale, on a large scale, that starts to impact the financial community and the big banks.
Right. Well, here's a stat that Related gave earlier this month. About a quarter of its retail tenants had paid rent in April. Another way of looking at that, 75% of its tenants did not pay their rent in April. Now, what's interesting about the rent piece is that in part, that's one of the things that needs to happen in some cases if you have a landlord who can absorb that, to essentially say, look, I'm going to give you some time. I'm going to either defer or maybe even just give you a pass here because I want you to be in business on the other side.
But then do the banks need to say to the developers, you get a pass as well?
Yeah, right.
Like how far do we go back with this?
Yeah, where does it stop? Absolutely. All right, coming up, we're going to have a conversation with a very, very influential and wise investor, Henry Cornell.
Yes.
Can't wait for that. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Stocks remain sharply higher in the final hour. Anticipation is rising for an eventual reopening of the U.S. economy. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is up 529, the S&P 500 up 70, the Nasdaq Composite up 256. The clock is ticking toward a U.S. meat shortage as sick workers force more slaughterhouses to close. Latest is Tyson Foods' Waterloo, Iowa pork plant. It is at least the sixth major U.S. meat facility to close in recent weeks. Would-be homebuyers are dipping a toe back into the mortgage market. The Mortgage Bankers Association says applications for home purchase loans are up for the first time in 6 weeks, but they're down more than 30% from early March. Movie theater owners may soon get the green light to begin reopening, but they may stay closed. An industry group says without new blockbusters to attract audiences, there may not be enough customers to make a reopening worthwhile. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Radio.
Hi, I'm Danica Patrick. Watching my nieces grow, play, and learn is amazing, but not every child gets to be carefree. 1 in 6 kids in the U.S. are hungry. This breaks my heart, and it's something that Feeding America is working to change. Each year, the Feeding America network of food banks rescues billions of pounds of good food that would have gone to waste and gives it to families in need. To help, visit feedingamerica.org.
Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions. The market's in.
Oh. Just there, Dave. Smashing. Great. Really? Night, Steve. Yeah, see ya. Built to take the big knocks. Samsung rugged devices. Easy to use, hard to break. Explore the Samsung rugged range.
There are 2 sides to every story. From the epic tales of love and loss comes the huge new steady rolling single.
When will the judgment come?
When the Judgment Comes, the Elise Rich remix. Download When the Judgment Comes, the Elise Rich remix, or stream wherever good music lives.
When the judgment comes.
When we're stuck indoors all day, we might find our energy bills creeping up uninvited. The cheeky rascals. And none of us need that right now. But by simply switching your energy with Money Supermarket, you could save £280 on your bills. It's just one small step towards money calm. Money Supermarket.
To help make the most of your time at home, TuneIn is sharing our top activities for social distancing. Tip number 4, relax. Don't feel like you have to be productive during these stressful days? This is the perfect time to focus on yourself. Whether that means meditating, taking a bath, sleeping in, or doing nothing at all, take a deep breath and treat yourself. For more indoor inspiration, search Listen from Home on TuneIn.
Hey, it's Jacoby here from Jalen and Jacoby, and after you watch The Last Dance on ESPN, which you're obviously going to do just like the rest of us stuck in our homes in quarantine, you can join Jalen Rose and I for Jalen and Jacoby, The After Show. And we will be joined by the director of the documentary series, Jason Eyre, to discuss each episode in detail. You can hear our After Show right here on ESPN Radio on Sunday nights after the episodes air, and they'll be available on the Jalen and Jacoby podcast feed.
Search Jalen and Jacoby to listen today.
I'm Mel Kiper Jr., and to get you ready for the NFL Draft, you can listen to my podcast, First Draft, as Todd McShay, Chris Sproul, and I highlight all the top picks and give you the analysis you need leading up to the draft. Just search ESPN Radio today.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
The moves may be choreographed, but the drama is real.
I dare you! I beg you to come down here right now!
Stay on top of everything happening in the pro wrestling universe with the Body Slamming podcasts on TuneIn. For passionate recaps of the most recent SmackDown, check out the What's Wrong with Wrestling show. And for a pro wrestler's perspective on life and culture at large, listen to Talk is Jericho. For these and more podcasts, search sports and scroll down to the world of wrestling.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
Live to New York, Bloomberg 1130. To Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 99.1. To Boston, Bloomberg 106.1. To San Francisco, Bloomberg 960. To the country, Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
Well, coming up, we're going to catch up with Henry Cornell, longtime investor, banker on Wall Street, owner in the private equity industry. He's got some perspectives, Carol, that I'm really eager to hear, both globally and locally.
Got a long list of questions, me as well. So looking forward to it. All right, let's get back to your top business stories. A check on the trading day. 29 minutes to go, Charlie Pellet.
29 minutes to go, and we've got the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ at or near session highs. S&P up 71 right now. That is a gain of 2.6%. The Dow up 535 points, up 2.3%. NASDAQ, sharp contrast from yesterday, up 256. That is a gain right now of just about 3.1%. So, stocks halting a two-day slide. Investors digesting the latest round of corporate earnings. Alcoa, by the way, after the bell today. Also, optimism about the eventual reopening of the economy is increasing. Now, one of the big challenges for healthcare professionals in fighting COVID-19 is increasing the number of tests and getting them to the right places and people. Dr. Lauren Sauer is a professor of emergency medicine at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health.
Testing is going to be critical to ending this lockdown, and then you link that testing with quick access to care, contact tracing, which is identifying people who had contact with people who are sick, and making sure that they stay isolated or quarantined if they're not sick until they pass their possible window of getting others sick.
The Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health is supported by Michael R. Bloomberg, founder of Bloomberg LP and Bloomberg Philanthropies. Delta Airlines is vowing to cut its daily cash burn in half as the carrier rushes to scale back operations amid a collapse in travel demand. Today, Delta reported its first adjusted quarterly loss since 2012. United Airlines will begin blocking middle seats in all aircraft cabins, joining an industry move to keep the center seat empty for the sake of social distancing in the pandemic era. Among some of the airline names today, we've got Delta down 2.5%, UAL is down 7.2%, American Airlines AAL down 6.4%, Southwest lower by 1.3%. Gold up 1.7%, now $17.14 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude $14 even a barrel, up 21%. Again, recapping, stocks lower, the 10-year 0.61%, S&P actually stocks higher, S&P up 69, a gain there of 2.5%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
I'm driving in my car. I turn on the radio.
How about you let me drive?
Oh, no.
Who's gonna drive you home?
Honey, please, I'll do the driving.
Drive on.
Excuse me, I want to drive.
Just drive, baby.
It's the question that drives us.
This is the Drive to the Close.
That funky music will drive us till the dawn.
On Bloomberg Radio.
All right, it's time for a special edition of Drive to the Close, a double shot because this guy deserves it. Henry Cornell, founder, senior partner of Cornell Capital, longtime investor, a globally minded guy, and full disclosure, a friend of mine. So happy to have him on the line from Long Island. Henry, how are you?
I am fine, Mr. Kelly. It's very nice to speak with you. I look forward to seeing you live at some point soon.
I know. Well, and also full disclosure, he has an amazing taste in wine, and he and I have been able to share a glass over the years, glass or maybe more than a glass. But in any case, Henry, first of all, trust you're well and your family and all of that, your employees. What's it like running a firm right now?
Well, I can tell you my kids, and I've got 5 of them, ages 7 to 14, think this is an early summer vacation with just a drop of teleschool thrown in to keep them in line. So, that is an interesting day to day. And then clearly, like many, many people, we are working remotely. And the idea of creating some level of efficiency when you're going call to call to call to call all day long is pretty hard. And then, we have an office in New York and then one in China. And so getting on with our folks over there and just keeping it up. I feel like I should have bought stock in AT&T because we're on the phones all day, every day.
Right. And Zoom.
And Blue Jeans and every one of these services.
Well, it's interesting. I'm curious about your thoughts on the economy and what it looks like afterwards, Henry, because I think that's the thing we're trying to figure out. We're hearing about how the airlines are going to have to operate. Sporting events. Don't expect any kind of big sporting events for a long time. Education. What's your expectations about the U.S. economy, which has proven itself so resilient through so much?
Well, I think I would, key off of your last comment. I am an optimist by nature. I always think of the glass as half empty, but I'm actually genuinely optimistic. This is different than anything I've experienced in my lifetime, from the first oil shock in the early 70s when I was in college to, 87, 91, 97. This is a social fallout that is just hard to imagine. And I can tell you, when I go to the local supermarket, people are wrapped up like mummies and they're depressed, and it's a bad version of Night of the Living Dead. However, saying that, I was in New York City this weekend because just needed to have a few meetings in person. And when you went to Central Park, spring was in the air. People were out social distancing somewhat appropriately. And I'm hopeful that this year is going to be getting back to what the new normal is, and that I believe next year you will see a real bounce. I think the pent-up demand of people who just want to get back to work, want to get on with their lives and enjoy themselves a bit and be productive is ingrained in our country. And I think we'll get back there, but this is definitely going to be a huge punch in the nose.
Henry, we've only got about a minute left before we bring you back and continue the conversation. But in that minute, what are your colleagues in China saying?
They say things are recovering. People are going to restaurants. People are actually traveling a bit. Factories are open. We own a number of factories in China, and it was slow getting back up to producing levels. But right now we're actually experiencing, I wouldn't call it a resurgence, capital R, but a resurgence, lower R. And I think the social norms pre-virus will continue to grow there. So I'm taking a little bit of a key off of what's happening in China with how I know things can recover here.
Right. Yeah, it's a really interesting perspective. All right, we're going to continue our conversation in just a few minutes with Henry Cornell, founder and senior partner of Cornell Capital. And notably, that Chinese perspective is important, Carol, because he was there in the 90s and really opened it up for Goldman Sachs. So we're going to talk about that and much more coming up.
And in many ways, I think we're looking to that as the playbook to figure out what happens to the U.S. economy on the other side of COVID-19. Do you want to mention a headline? Harvard saying it will not accept federal aid after criticism from President Trump. So just crossing the Bloomberg terminal. All right, you're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. We will continue with Henry Cornell, founder and senior partner at Cornell Capital. We'll get to that in just a moment. In the meantime, we do want to get another check on world and national news headlines. For that, let's turn things over to Bob Moon. Hi, Bob.
Hi, Carol. As parts of the U.S. and other countries begin to reopen, the World Health Organization is warning today that most countries are still in the early stages. And what's more, the UN group says some countries are seeing a resurgence of cases. In Geneva today, WHO Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus said the virus remains extremely dangerous.
Make no mistake, we have a long way to go. This virus will be with us for a long time.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi said a major package of aid for state and local governments will next be on the stimulus legislation considered by Congress, setting up a conflict with Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, who is urging a slowdown in doling out federal help. Still, she tells Bloomberg's David Weston she had no doubt the relief package will pass the House in a strong bipartisan way.
It's going to be a major package. It's going to address, again, the needs of the states and localities, because that's where much of the healthcare delivery is, in public hospitals and the rest, as well as testing and that is in our bill that will be dispersed in some of it to many of the states out there, some of the money for testing, and also the lost revenue.
President Trump on Twitter today said he has instructed the Navy to, quote, shoot down and destroy any and all Iranian gunboats if they harass our ships at sea. Last week, small Iranian gunboats came close to U.S. Navy ships in a manner the Navy called unsafe and unprofessional. At today's Pentagon briefing, Deputy Defense Secretary David Norquist said the president is sending Iran a message.
What he was emphasizing is all of our ships retain the right of self-defense, and people need to be very careful in their interactions to understand the inherent right of self-defense.
And I'm Bob Moon.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing for a highly personalized experience? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's fast-paced environment, where the only constants are change and volatility, you need a prime broker who's both steady and agile, focused on supporting your needs so that you can focus on growing your business and producing results. Exceptional client service and advocating for our clients is at the core of what we do. Our award-winning high-touch team is just one of the benefits of working with BNY Mellon. We help alternative investment managers create great experiences for their clients. Whether it's customized financing, securities lending solutions, platform access, or outsourced trading, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and dedicated to meeting your evolving demands.
To learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers, visit Pershing.com. Pershing, LLC. Member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
Message and data rates may apply. TNC and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
Are you interested in a... Hey, it's Jacoby here from Jalen and Jacoby, and after you watch The Last Dance on ESPN, which you're obviously going to do just like the rest of us stuck in our homes in quarantine, you can join Jalen Rose and I for Jalen and Jacoby, The After Show. And we will be joined by the director of the documentary series, Jason Eyre, to discuss each episode in detail. You can hear our After Show right here on ESPN Radio on Sunday nights after the episodes air, and they'll be available on the Jalen and Jacoby podcast feed.
Search Jalen and Jacoby to listen today. Want to relive the glory of college football?
Balls over a man, into the end zone,
Come explore TuneIn's classic game replay collection to hear ESPN's complete coverage of the 2019 New Year's 6 bowl games. Don't miss your chance to re-experience the Rose Bowl, the 2020 National Championship, featuring Clemson and LSU.
There are going to be 2 champions on the field tomorrow night, and there's going to be 1 team hold up the trophy.
10, plays to the 5, touchdown! Search classic game replays to listen for free.
How do you keep track of all your favorite stations and podcasts? Easy. You add them to your favorites list. Just find the audio you want to bookmark and tap the heart icon. Then whenever you want to browse your favorites, you'll find everything under the Favorites tab.
Get ready for the 2020 NFL Draft with TuneIn.
Do your homework on this year's top prospects, rising stars, and late-round sleepers with football podcasts like Move the Sticks.
Is my pick because I know he is an athletic freak, a guy that is capable of doing it all. He can blitz, he can run, he can cover.
And when the draft gets underway on April 23rd, follow every round and every pick for free.
In the 2018 NFL.
It's always football season on TuneIn. The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
While he was gone, Al had some kind of vote to make him the managing. You remember, he used to come up all the time in the Raiders game that he was the managing general partner. By the way, don't forget, there was a lot going on in Munich. Did you know how tired that man was to come back and find out that Al Davis had strong-armed his team from him while he was gone?
Search The Right Time with Bomani Jones to listen.
Get your MLB fix with these great podcasts on TuneIn. Fill your 7th inning stretch with the Ringer MLB Show.
I just can't get over it. It's like, oh, well, Jeter Downs didn't realize he was a top. Like, my dad is drinking the Kool-Aid on this. He's like, of course. Mookie was going to leave. I'm like, what do you mean? You don't know that.
Slide into second with the Starting 9 podcast.
Nolan Arenado slides right into the top spot for a favorite baseball player. Active in the league right now. It is a pleasure to be sitting next to you, sir.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Thank you.
This is we've been waiting a long time for this. We actually, in terms of like active
Round the Bases with the StatCast podcast.
Ways of going about it. I picked third, so in some ways it made it easier for me. Mike, just to go over the first couple of picks. Mike took Barry Bonds, who I think was kind of the obvious guy to take number one. Not only
catch these and more MLB podcasts right here on TuneIn.
To help make the most of your time at home, TuneIn is sharing our top activities for social distancing. Tip number 5, cooking something. We all get stuck in a culinary rut with our normal routine. Shake things up in the kitchen by trying an ambitious new recipe or an over-the-top dessert. If cooking really isn't your thing, you can always support your local restaurants by ordering out. For more indoor inspiration, search Listen from Home on TuneIn.
24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. 13 minutes to go ahead of the closing bell. Stock surge, oil rallies, lots of earnings after the bell. Let's head right over to the first word breaking news desk for today's afternoon call. Here he is, working from home, Bill Maloney.
And good afternoon, Charlie. That's right. U.S. stocks trading higher today, helped by gains in oil. Dow's currently up 514 points. S&P's gain 69. while NASDAQ climbs by 245. The U.S. 10-year yield at 0.62%. WTI crude futures gain 21%. Small caps rise 8 points. Transports are up just 27, and semis outperform, gaining 6.2%. Leaders to the upside in the Dow: Intel, McDonald's, and Nike. Modest declines for Boeing. After earnings, Chipotle gained 12%. Snap surged 34%, while Netflix fell 2%. In other news, Sycamore seeks to scrap the Victoria's Secret deal. And wrapping things up, some of the names pointing after the bell tonight include Alcoa, Rail, CSX, and Las Vegas Sands. Live from the First Breaking News Desk, I'm Bill Maloney. Charlie?
Okay, I thank you very much, Bill. And to hear live breaking news over your Bloomberg, type Squawk, SQUAWK, on your terminal. I'm Charlie Pellet. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, got it, Charlie. I want to get back to Henry Cornell, founder and senior partner at Cornell Capital, on the phone from Long Island, New York. So, Henry, one thing I wanted to ask you, there's a story in Bloomberg Businessweek magazine this week, and it talks about Wuhan reopening and what's involved, and it talks about use of robots and, meeting rooms that are kept to a capacity of just a handful of people. You don't use elevators, you use stairs. There's a lot of changes. Is that going to be our world as well as we get back to...
I certainly think so for a period of time. I'll give you an example. I flew to Chicago last week to have a meeting that I just didn't want to do over Bloomberg. Not Bloomberg, sorry, Blue Jeans. And
or Bloomberg, that's fine.
No, I know
that could be a new show.
Jason, you have to teach me how to use it because I'm somewhat technologically inefficient. But we flew and we went to hotel by the airport, and I asked the lady at the desk, and she said, on a good day, we're 7% occupied. And so they gave us the ballroom. I kid you not, and it was for 3 people on my side and 1 person. And we literally sat at a table that was 20 by 20, and it was certainly much better than being on the telephone. But I think those types of things, until people feel safe and protocols are in place and hopefully infections go down and vaccinations are arriving, you're just going to see some strange changes. But the interesting thing is how people have innovated during this period of time because they want to get on with their life. And I think that's the important part here. There are some who are hiding in their foxholes, but I think people are really trying to figure out how to get on with it. And right. I think that's the important thing, which also underscores my own optimism for how we will get back to stasis at some point, hopefully soon.
Well, and as you're demonstrating with that story, Henry, I mean, there are some things, especially in your world, where you are entering into a long-term relationship. In private equity, if you're doing a deal with someone, I mean, it's intimate in a lot of ways and important. And as I said, sort of long term, that requires a certain type of interaction. I mean, you've experienced this over many decades in this business. And I do wonder, what this portends for a business like private equity that is so relationship reliant.
Well, I think every business has a very powerful element of personal relationship. We're not special or different, but clearly when you're about to commit capital to someone, you want to look them in the eye,
right,
shake their hand, oh my God, and actually have a meal with them and just make sure that you're all on the same karmic wavelength in order to continue to do business together. Because even in the best of times, doing things profitably is hard work. And so I do think people will need to get back there. But I also see the technology that seems to have come to the forefront here will certainly be more in use than it has. I mean, I've used video teleconferencing because it is efficient than flying somewhere for just an hour meeting. But at the end of the day, there's nothing like the personal touch.
Right. I do wonder, in the world of private equity, and you, as you pointed out at the early part of our conversation, Henry, you've seen cycles, you've seen crises, you've seen emerging markets like China in the late 80s, and China and Japan all across Asia in the late 80s, early 90s. You practice a form of private equity, I think it's fair to say, and keep me honest here, that's a little bit different than maybe what we would ascribe to a Blackstone or a KKR. They use a lot of leverage and, $10, $20, $30 billion deals. You're practicing a more sort of bespoke and maybe even sort of pure version to some extent. Where do you see opportunity here for that type of model, whether it's sectors or whether it's specific dislocations in this type of environment?
Well, our firm's strategy has been to effectively invest in U.S. companies and take them to Asia. I lived in Asia for 12 years, from 88 to 2000. A number of my partners are veterans of that era as well. And that is core to us. And the other part is we are genuinely low leverage. In our portfolio, we have no subordinated securities, no mezzanine debt, only senior positions. And before the virus, our average leverage was 3.8 times. That protects us in an environment like that. And I think the portfolio we have will have opportunities from competitors where we can help do a rescue finance, do a merger, and basically help people get out of this. We're not, shall we say, vulture investors at all. We try to be constructive. We want to protect franchises. And, this opportunity, since we are, and I'm knocking on wood as I say this, in a reasonably good position, allows us to actually be very constructive in conversations. And I'll tell you, in the last 3 weeks, phone has been ringing off the hook in a very good way, and we're having lots of conversations, which is why some of those conversations I want in person, so I hopped on a plane last week as opposed to, doing it over the phone.
So you've made investments then over the last couple of weeks as a result?
We've made conversations over the last few weeks, and things are in what they call the pipeline. These are very positive things.
There are so many industries that Jason and I have been talking about, Henry, about whether it's the restaurant industry, watching very closely, retail, which was troubled, safe to say, going into this. What's the fallout that you see that will be the result of this?
Carol, that's a really tough one. One of my oldest friends is one of the largest owners of various franchises in the United States, and this is the toughest thing he's ever gone through, because you literally have a mandate to shut your business, and how you pay your rent, how you pay the electric bill, which still comes in, and how you maintain your employees is going to be very, very hard. And then, there are articles in the papers today, even some of the great restaurateurs in New York City, like Danny Myers and others like that, they're going to have restaurants that are, for argument's sake, 30% full as opposed to capacity. Those numbers just don't work. And so it's tough. I wish I had a crisp silver bullet response to that, but from hotels to restaurants to any leisure activity. You guys mentioned sporting events. I'm an old Bronx boy, so I've got tickets at Yankee Stadium. I can't wait to get to the stadium, but God knows how many people are going to be allowed in.
Right. Well, or even if we'll see baseball. I mean, I think we're hard pressed to imagine seeing each other, running into each other at Yankee Stadium this year, Henry.
Oh, Jason, break my heart.
I know. I'm sorry. Maybe you'll have to get on a plane to Arizona or Florida to see the Yankees.
Arizona's been offering up, right? Come on over, teams.
Exactly. All right. Well, look forward to catching up with you again before too long, hopefully in person, hopefully over a glass of wine. Henry Cornell, really appreciate it. Founder and senior partner at Cornell Capital. And as we described, someone who just has truly global experience, for a number of decades and in real time, working with his partners there in China, Carol.
And I got to say, I do appreciate his optimism. Certainly when I see a headline crossing the Bloomberg that talks about California recording 86 COVID-19 deaths since Tuesday, and that is up 6.8%. And that's not what we want to be seeing. We want to see those numbers. Certainly the percentage increases going down. All right, you're listening to Bloomberg Business Week, just about 3 minutes away from that closing bell. Stick around. We'll have those closing numbers. Take a look at some of the stocks on the move. This is Bloomberg Radio.
Leaders are born.
Hit the court anytime with these great NBA podcasts on TuneIn. The Low Post.
So what struck you about this potential head-to-head matchup? What did we learn now that Zion is involved and LeBron and Zion go at each other for the first time?
I still think both teams have to figure out kind of who are their guys when they get into a fourth quarter. I think you saw that with both of them. There were some kind of odd moments.
The Ringer NBA Show.
Who ended up winning the thing. But I did watch for a little bit when it was DeAndre Ayton and Zach LaVine playing against each other. And then as the days went on, Devin Booker was involved. Tell me you've seen the clip of Devin Booker when I can't remember who his opponent was.
Or the Haber Show.
At the end, it's because I worked in the NBA in the front office, and when I was 14 years old, my family moved back from Sudan to America. I jumped high school here in New York
Find these and more NBA podcasts right here on TuneIn. Be part of the college sports conversation on TuneIn. Hear the latest storylines around SEC football with the Paul Feinbaum Show.
I distinctly remember when you were hired, and I must say most of us thought you were out of your mind. Giving up, I wouldn't call it a cush job because you were traveling across the country.
Get your college hoops fix with college basketball talk on NBC Sports.
Headed by Shabazz Napier, that also included Amita Brima, who is in and around the NBA ranks right now, and DeAndre Daniels, who was the 37th pick in the 2014 NBA draft. So my question to you is...
Or listen to the daily news from around the wide world of college football with College Football Live.
I would go with Utah. I think Utah is the better team. And I know I'm talking to an Oklahoma guy, but listen, and it may be recency bias having watched Utah last week and doing that game, but I just think they're a more complete football.
Discover these and more college sports podcasts right here on TuneIn.
To help make the most of your time at home, TuneIn is sharing our top activities for social distancing. Tip 3, have a game night. In fact, why not make it a game day? Whether you're quarantined with kids or roommates, nothing passes the time like a game of cards, Pictionary, charades, dominoes, or Never Have I Ever. If you've got the hardware, break out the video game console and enjoy hours of guilt-free gaming. For more indoor inspiration, search Listen From Home on TuneIn.
The sports world is full of inspirational stories of heroic figures. It also has its fair share of shady characters. Aaron Hernandez, Donald Sterling, Bikram Choudhury, O.J. Simpson. For detailed retellings of some of the darkest sagas in sports, search sports documentaries on the TuneIn app.
24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. There you have it. Sound of the closing bell at the New York Stock Exchange, being run by Kevin McSpeeden. He's the Assistant Chief Electrician at the New York Stock Exchange, all alone, social distancing, ringing that closing bell as we await the latest numbers out of Boston Beer, CSX, Las Vegas Sands, Alcoa, Discover Financial, and Xilinx. The Dow up 450 points at the bell, up by 2%. S&P up 62 to 2798. That's a gain of 2.3%. NASDAQ up 232 points higher by 2.8%. Bottom line, stocks halted a two-day slide as investors digested the latest round of corporate earnings, and optimism about the eventual reopening of the economy increased. Oil surged today from record lows. West Texas Intermediate crude up 18.5%, now at $13.68 a barrel. So the S&P 500 index did rebound from the worst sell-off in 3 weeks amid quarterly results that spark speculation a recovery will be sooner than expected. Henry Cornell is the founder of Cornell Capital, and right here on Bloomberg Business Week, he told us there's no question there is light at the end of the tunnel.
I believe next year you will see a real bounce. I think the pent-up demand of people who just want to get back to work, want to get on with their lives and enjoy themselves a bit and be productive is ingrained in our country. And I think we'll get back there, but this is definitely going to be a huge punch in the nose.
Snap shares soared after the social media company reported results that were much stronger than anticipated. Snap up today by 36.2%. Netflix reported earnings last night. It dropped by 2.9%. Tyson Foods plans to halt operations at its largest pork plant, this one in Waterloo, Iowa. Tyson shares today down by 3.2%. Recapping, stocks higher, S&P up 62, up 2.3%. Gold up 1.9%. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that's Bloomberg Business Flash.
Move around. Motion creates emotion.
I feel the earth move under my feet.
You move like they do. I've never seen anyone move that fast.
All right, people, let's move like we've got a purpose.
Company's called Movers and Shakers. They cost a little more, but that name cracked me up.
Bloomberg Business Week, Movers and Shakers, with Carol Mazur and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
Yes, indeed. Time to take a look at some of your movers and shakers. on this Wednesday. Forgive me, I was just looking at some of the headlines crossing. One of the headlines we do want to mention has to do with the virus. U.S. COVID-19 cases rising 3.1%. That is below the 4.4% average that we've seen over the last week. So that is the type of trend lines that certainly folks are looking for. So we'll keep an eye on that and any other virus headlines as they are known. Of course, here's another one.
Another headline. This is really interesting. The U.S. probing whether traders profited off of tips on Russia at OPEC. Of course, that huge sort of confrontation that is at the core of the drop in oil markets and oil prices. So looking into some activity there. We'll follow up on that as well.
Yeah, we'll have to figure out which traders and what exactly we're talking about there. S&P 500, you heard Charlie breaking down those numbers. We finished off our highs at the level of the day, but just off our highs of the session. 411 names in the S&P 500 higher today, 91 lower, 3 unchanged. And Jason, I mentioned, if you look at those major industry groups, everything's up. Information technology was up 3.9%. Energy names bouncing back 3.6%. Utilities up almost 3%. Everything was up across the board, but those that were considered, quote unquote, the laggards still gaining. Financials near the bottom of the pack, up 1% still. So were consumer staples. They were up about 1% on the day overall.
Interesting to take a look at Netflix today. I mean, especially after we saw those numbers break after the close around this time yesterday. We chatted with Dan Morgan from Synovus about them. It was a blockbuster report. I mean, just amazing.
As expected, but even more so.
Even more so. I mean, I was saying actually over dinner last night to my family, that normally it's like 4.5, 5 million. I think new subscribers is great. They were expecting the most liberal or most enthusiastic.
Aggressive, yeah.
Thank you. Estimates were up around 9 and they came in at 15, 16. I mean, that's incredible. Yeah. And yet investors today kind of catching their breath and actually sending the shares down 2.9% closing. I mean, still, it's a stock that is, let me just double check where it is. It's up 30% this year. So no crocodile tears for Netflix. But part of it is, can they keep it up and, can they keep the pipeline as fresh as they need to? A bit of good news that I saw for them is that Ozark, which I'm not sure if you watched that show,
I know of it,
actually better performing than even Tiger King. So there you go.
What?
Yeah.
But what's interesting is I loved how they approached it. They came out on their call right off the bat and said, yep, we knew these numbers were going to be kind of off the charts. This is not what we expect normal,
right.
Viewership to be after the virus. So I love that they were realistic about this. Do want to mention CSX crossing the Bloomberg terminal here after the close. First quarter EPS, $1. That's 6 cents better than what was forecasted. Revenue spot on, $2.86 billion. They, like we've heard from so many different companies, Jason, withdrawing their forecast and evaluating their CapEx outlook. And I think that's what's going to hurt us. CapEx has been held back, I think, a lot in this expansion coming out of the financial crisis. But you're going to see that companies just don't have a lot of cash on hand to do that, or the demand for it.
Totally. Let's take a quick look at volatility. The VIX down about 7.4%, closing at 42.05. This is Bloomberg.
All right, Dave, you're up.
Hi, my name is Dave.
Wilson, where are you? Wilson!
Just what do you think you're doing, Dave?
We're going for a price on Wilson. Open up the door. It's Dave. Who? Dave.
Hey, Mr. Wilson!
I actually believe it's Dave Exotic.
Yeah, you're
Dave,
not going to let that one go.
I'm not going to let it go.
All right, Dave Wilson here with us with his chart and stock of the day. Speaking of double shots, let's start with the chart, Dave.
Yeah, let's do. It's really a comparison of yields between stocks and bonds, specifically the S&P 500 and 10-year treasuries. It's a comparison that popped up in a note yesterday from Bespoke Investment Group. And really, ever since stocks bull market ended in February, if you sort of take the average gap between the dividend yield on the S&P 500 and the yield on the 10-year treasury, I mean, you're talking 1.3 percentage points. And if you go back to the last bear market, that went no higher on any day than 1.2. So you're looking at the biggest gap in favor of stocks in decades. The chart just shows back to 2000. I ran numbers using Yale's Robert Shiller database. And you find there that you're talking about the biggest advantage for stocks since the mid-1950s, just to show you how things are changing. And if you want to know more about this, folks, send me an email. I'll get you the chart, the explanation that goes with it, and everything I do going forward. The email address is dwilson@bloomberg.net. That's dwilson@bloomberg.net.
Right. It's a story we've talked about a lot, right, Dave, about why investors can, increasingly go into equities because you look at the difference.
All right. I love this.
Advantage.
I love this stock. Tell us about your stock of the day.
American Eagle Outfitters, Jason. It's a retail chain that specializes in clothing for teens and young adults. Now, the company also sells intimate apparel to a wider clientele under the brand name Aerie. American Eagle has been around since 1977 and has been publicly traded since 1994. The ticker is AEO. The shares set a record back in 2007 and have fluctuated at lower prices since then. American Eagle is having a down year in 2020, as you might expect. The shares have fallen as much as 55% as the coronavirus has led to store closings. American Eagle said in a filing that results for this fiscal quarter and year will be, quote, significantly adversely impacted, end quote, by the pandemic, even though online sales are surging. The company withdrew annual forecasts, as many other businesses have done. Now, American Eagle also said it will reduce this year's capital spending by $100 million, or roughly 40%, and raise cash by selling $400 million of 5-year convertible notes. You put that all together, American Eagle shares had their biggest loss since August 2001. They dropped more than 19% on the day.
Wow. That's a bad one. It's a well-known name here in the Kelly household. All right, Dave Wilson, thank you so much. Really appreciate that. Let's head out to San Francisco now. Ed Baxter's there for World and National Headlines. Hey, Ed.
All right, Jason. Hey, gotcha. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says the House will pass the SBA stimulus bill, most probably tomorrow. Unlike the Senate, she tells Bloomberg's David Weston, balance of power, the House has different parliamentary considerations.
We're 430 members now, and we'll need to have a quorum and a majority to get it passed, but we will.
She says the key to any reopening of the government is testing. That is echoed by California Governor Gavin Newsom, who is announcing new goals this hour for testing. He says a foundation for any opening. He says there is no light switch or timeline. He's announced opening up of scheduled surgeries, though.
These are surgeries that, yes, are scheduled, but also are essential. Tumors, heart valves, the need for people to get the kind of care that they deserve. If it's delayed, it becomes ultimately denied.
And he says not ready to open the state either, that will have 6 principles based on science. He says it will not be a light switch. After meeting with President Donald Trump yesterday, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo says today the state cannot reopen too soon.
Don't make the decision based on political pressure. I'm not going to do that. I am not going to do that. This is a profound moment. We make a bad move, it's going to set us back. And I get the political pressure. And I get the political pressure that local officials are under.
He says they can't be stupid, though. He says the Navy hospital ship Comfort that had been dispatched there is no longer needed. In San Francisco, I'm Ed Baxter. This is Bloomberg.
Why can't you just go to some remote island and wait till all this is over?
The range of outcomes is so wide.
Because it's your job.
What do you think some of the structural changes might result?
Fortunately, it's our job too.
How's value done in this market?
Paul Sweeney and Lisa Abramowitz.
It's very hard to make a forecast.
Bloomberg Markets.
This could be a lower for longer type of hit.
Weekday mornings at 10 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Hi, it's Olivia Munn with my shelter pets, Frankie and Chance. Say hi, guys. When I adopted them, I discovered that they both have incredible personalities. Chance's sole purpose in life is to love and to be loved. Frankie is a little bit of a scoundrel and always entertaining. They're a little bit of a lot of things, but they're all pure love. Adopt pure love at theshelterpetproject.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council, the Humane Society of the United States, and Maddie's Fund.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions.
If you love them enough to listen to them practice the same song on tuba, please be done. Over and over and over and over and over. Then surely you'll check NHTSA.gov/the right seat to make sure they're correctly buckled in the back seat.
Sounds good, honey.
Check today at NHTSA.gov/the right seat. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
What if you could keep the top?
Dating can be tricky, especially when you can't meet face to face. So it's time to get creative with the easy way to replace physical dates, Video Call from Bumble, the dating app where women make the first move. Here's Anna Williamson and Tom Reed-Wilson with some tips on connecting online.
It's a bit harder to flirt with limited body language, but nothing beats a smile and some eye contact to show them you're interested.
And have an activity plan for your date. This will help break the ice.
Download Bumble today.
Okay, people, I've got the daily checklist. Who today has ignored a call on purpose? Tick. Talked yourself out of a workout? Tick. Spent far too long scrolling on your phone? Tick. Here's another for your list. BritBox. Streaming the BBC, ITV, Channel 5, and now Channel 4. All in one place and ad-free. So add BritBox to your list and get a 30-day free trial of the biggest box of British box sets. Search BritBox free trial. Tick. Biggest compared to other SVOD providers. Auto renews at $5.99 a month unless cancelled. T's and C's apply.
With the NHL season temporarily on ice, now is a good time to catch up on past games. With Game Replay on TuneIn, you can hear every matchup of the 2019-2020 season so far. And for a limited time, it's free for hockey fans everywhere. Search classic Game Replays to start listening.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
With millions of podcasts dropping new episodes all the time, how do you keep up with all of your favorites? TuneIn makes it easy. Simply head to the home screen and find the Your New Episode section to see the latest additions.
A social distancing tip.
Putting distance between yourself and others is critical to slowing the spread of coronavirus. So here are ways to stay in contact without the physical contact part. Call, send a text, set up a video conference, post on social media, dedicate a song on the radio. If you have symptoms of fever, dry cough, and shortness of breath, call your healthcare provider before going to their office. For more info, visit coronavirus.gov.
Let's all do our part, because we're all #AloneTogether. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Be part of the college sports conversation on TuneIn. Hear the latest storylines around SEC football with the Paul Feinbaum Show.
I distinctly remember when you were hired, and I must say most of us thought you were out of your mind. Giving up, I wouldn't call it a cush job because you were traveling across the country.
Get your college hoops fix with college basketball talk on NBC Sports.
Headed by Shabazz Napier. That also included Amita Brima, who is in and around the NBA ranks right now, and DeAndre Daniels, who was the 37th pick in the 2014 NBA draft. So my question to you is...
Or listen to the daily news from around the wide world of college football with College Football Live.
I would go with Utah. I think Utah is the better team. And I know I'm talking to an Oklahoma guy, but listen, and it may be recency bias having watched Utah last week and doing that game, but I just think they're a more complete football.
Discover these and more college sports podcasts right here on TuneIn. Get your MLB fix with these great podcasts on TuneIn. Fill your seventh inning stretch with the Ringer MLB Show.
I just can't get over it. It's like, well, Jeter Downs. Didn't realize he was a top. Like, my dad is drinking the Kool-Aid on this. He's like,
of course.
Mookie was going to leave. I'm like, What do you mean? You don't know that.
Slide into second with the Starting Nine podcast.
Nolan Arenado slides right into the top spot for favorite baseball player. Active in the league right now. It is a pleasure to be sitting next to you, sir.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Thank you.
This is we've been waiting a long time for this. We actually, in terms of like active
Round the bases with the Statcast podcast.
Ways of going about it. I picked third, so in some ways it made it easier for me. Mike, just to go over the first couple of picks. Mike took Barry Bonds, who I think was kind of the obvious guy to take number one. Not only
catch these and more MLB podcasts right here on TuneIn.
Lines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. Number of earnings after the closing bell. Let's begin with Alcoa. It is suspending projections for market supply and demand balances. Also says it will continue a review of its asset portfolio, and Alcoa has cut its forecast for 2020 aluminum segment shipments. Boston Beer also out after the bell. That's the maker of Sam Adams. It's withdrawing its forecast for the year. Boston Beer shares, they're up now by just about 2% after ours. It was an up day on Wall Street. Stocks rebounding with the S&P up 62, a gain of 2.3%. The Dow up 456, up by 2%. NASDAQ up 232 points, up 2.8%. 10-year down 15.30 seconds, the yield 0.61%. Gold up 1.8%. 17.16 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude rebounding there, up 21% today. WTI back with a 14 handle now, 14.05 a barrel. Recapping, equities higher today, closing close to the session's highs. S&P up 62, up by 2.3%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. Well, crisis leads often to greater failed leadership. Safe to say we've seen both in the pandemic. Writing about leadership is Joel Peterson. He is the chairman of the board of overseers at the Hoover Institution at Stanford, professor at the Stanford Graduate School of Business, founder of Peterson Partners, as well as the chairman of the board at JetBlue Airways. He's been there for 12 years, and he has served on more than 36 boards over the past 45 years. His book out this week, Entrepreneurial Leadership, The Art of Launching New Ventures, Inspiring Others, and Running Stuff. He joins us, Joel does, on the phone from Salt Lake City, Utah. Joel, delighted to have you here with us. Tell us, first of all, how are you doing? I hope your family's well. You're out there in Salt Lake City. I have family out there. Tell me a little bit about what you're seeing and how it's going.
Actually, things are doing well here in Salt Lake. I don't think we feel the same stress that you feel in New York. I know we don't, but people are locked down. They're not leaving their homes for the most part. But in terms of my family, everybody's doing great.
Well, I'm glad to. We're very glad to hear that. What is being stressed out, though, and I've got to ask you about the airline industry. We just talked earlier about Delta, and I mean, this is an industry that has just been shut down. What are your expectations about what the airline industry looks on the other side of the virus?
Well, I think people are not going to abandon traveling. People like to travel. They like to see family and friends. Meetings go better in reality than when they're flesh and bone people than when it's virtual. And so I think travel will come back, but I think it'll be altered. I think people will be careful. I think the notion of safety will expand to healthcare safety. I think people will expect the planes to be sanitized. I think they'll expect to have more room. We'll probably have some testing as to fevers and things like that. But I think travel will come back. We have a bit of a Band-Aid from the government to get the airlines through this difficult moment.
Well, and tell us a little bit more about what you make of that Band-Aid at this point and this notion of survival. You know, we had our analyst on breaking down, as Carol alluded to, Delta earnings and essentially saying for the whole industry, this is just about surviving, basically just managing that burn, trying to get to the other side of it. More needed from the government, or what needs to happen next?
Well, I think it's a question of how travel comes back and how the industry is able to adjust. I don't think anybody really knows that yet. We still don't even know how the models are working. We know we had the denominator wrong. Some people think we may have the numerator wrong, too, and that may determine how things go. But I'm bullish about the travel industry in general, but not for a while. I think it'll come back fairly slowly and then a cautious way, and I think the current help from the government may be adequate to get us to the other side.
Yeah, because I have wondered, JetBlue is certainly a company we cover a lot. I've talked with various senior executives over there. I mean, just some of the conversations that you guys have been having around the board table or with senior management.
Yeah, so since this really all broke, we've basically had board meetings every week.
The virtual board, yeah.
Yeah. So we've been fairly active in that, and we've worked with our management team, which, if you know them, they're spectacular. They're really wonderful, and they've been very thoughtful and have managed their way through this in a spectacular way.
Well, let's talk about managing it at a time like this, Joel, because it's at the core of a lot of things you've written about before, including your new book just out, Entrepreneurial Leadership. I mean, this calls for, I don't know if it's a different kind of leader, but maybe a different kind of leadership. What are the real-time lessons here?
Well, I think it does demand entrepreneurial leadership, which is the title of this book, but I don't think it'll do to be a presider giving directives from a corner office or managing complexity or administrating policy or being a politician. I think it really is going to require an entrepreneur, and I think it requires beyond entrepreneurship, where entrepreneurs innovate, but they don't necessarily manage well what they've innovated. So I've really tried to come up with this term that captures the whole notion of building a durable enterprise, building an enduring culture. And so I think that's really what's going to be required in many industries, not just small companies recovering, but I think many large companies are going to need that kind of entrepreneurial leadership.
Well, what do you make of, because, I think you've been thinking, too, about job one is survival through all of this, right? And Exactly. It is a question of kind of what does your balance sheet look like? How liquid are you? And I think what we're finding, and Jason and I have talked about even the restaurant industry, even those that have been so successful are scrambling. So I don't know. What is it? Is it going to make businesses reassess kind of, their safety nets that they need to have on hand just in case?
Well, I think it'll probably do that. I've been through a couple of real estate workouts, and, for a while, everybody is really cautious, but it's very tough in these capital-intensive businesses to have enough liquidity to see you through a real downturn, an extended downturn. So we had one of the best balance sheets in the airline industry. We had a fair amount of cash and a fair amount of borrowing capacity, but still, when you're grounding 170 planes and when your revenue drops 90 to 95%, it's pretty tough.
Right. Absolutely. All right. We're going to continue our conversation with Joel Peterson. He's the chairman of JetBlue, professor at the Stanford Graduate School of Business, a school well known to us because it's the number one business school in the world and in the country. Also the founder of Peterson Partners. He's got a new book, Entrepreneurial Leadership, The Art of Launching New Ventures, Inspiring Others, and Running Stuff. So we're going to continue that conversation in just a couple minutes.
Yeah, looking forward to that. And then a little bit later on, we're going to check into the recording industry, the music industry, and also the home building industry. We've got leaders from both of those fields, so we'll get into that in just a moment. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week on this Wednesday. Carol Massar, Jason Kelly, and this is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Wall Street caught an updraft of optimism that sparked gains of 2 to almost 3% across the stock averages. The Dow rose 457 points, the Nasdaq 232, the S&P 63. Money managers credit oil's long crawl back from negative numbers. Crude futures rose 19% to settle at $13.78 a barrel, as well as the hope of more federal aid in a vote tomorrow and plans to reopen the economy starting to take shape. Treasury Secretary Mnuchin says things could be fully reopened in August. The coronavirus isn't stopping cord cutting. AT&T's latest results showed a big drop in premium video subscribers, down nearly 17% year over year. Those numbers include, however, just a few weeks of impact from the pandemic. The richest college in the country, Harvard, says it won't accept federal aid money after criticism from President Trump. Harvard reiterates it never did apply for government aid, nor did it receive any. Joan Doniger, Bloomberg Radio.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma.
At age 30, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, you can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions. The Bloomberg Business of Sport.
I can find and fund my car, from a Mini to a Jaguar.
Feel good car buying from findandfundmycar.com is the place where you can find quality used cars from trusted dealers rated by you, and where you can fund your car with finance to fit your budget. It's feel good car buying, all in one place.
Shouldn't be a carry on, choose findandfundmycar.com.
Get your MLB fix with these great podcasts on TuneIn. Fill your seventh inning stretch with the Ringer MLB Show.
I just can't get over it. It's like, oh, well, Jeter Downs. Didn't realize he was a top. Like, my dad is drinking the Kool-Aid on this. He's like, of course. Mookie was going to leave. I'm like, what do you mean? You don't know that.
Slide into second with the Starting Nine podcast.
Nolan Arenado slides right into the top spot for favorite baseball player. Active in the league right now. It is a pleasure to be sitting next to you, sir.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Thank you.
This is we've been waiting a long time for this. We actually, in terms of like active
Round the Bases with the Statcast podcast.
Ways of going about it. I picked third, so in some ways it made it easier for me. Mike, just to go over the first couple of picks. Mike took Barry Bonds, who I think was kind of the obvious guy to take number one. Not only
catch these and more MLB podcasts right here on TuneIn. Get ready for the 2020 NFL Draft with TuneIn.
Do your homework on this year's top prospects, rising stars, and late round sleepers with football podcasts like Move the Sticks.
Is my pick because I know he is an athletic freak, a guy that is capable of doing it all. He can blitz, he can run, he can cover.
And when the draft gets underway on April 23rd, follow every round and every pick for free.
In the 2018 NFL. It's always football season on TuneIn.
The moves may be choreographed, but the drama is real.
I dare you, I beg you to come down here right now.
Stay on top of everything happening in the pro wrestling universe with the Body Slamming podcasts on TuneIn. For passionate recaps of the most recent SmackDown, check out the What's Wrong with Wrestling show. And for a pro wrestler's perspective on life and culture at large, listen to Talk is Jericho. For these and more podcasts, search sports and scroll down to the world of wrestling.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
How do you keep track of all your favorite stations and podcasts? Easy. You add them to your favorites list. Just find the audio you want to bookmark and tap the heart icon. Then, whenever you want to browse your favorites, you'll find everything under the Favorites tab.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
And you're
coming up, we're going to continue our conversation with Joel Peterson.
Jinx.
I'm excited to do it. Jinx.
Yeah, me too. Lots more questions to ask him, so we'll get to that in just a moment. Let's get back to your top business stories. Hey, Charlie Pellet.
Well, hello there. Lots going on after the bell. Been a little bit busy, but that's what we're here for. Brought to you by BNY Mellon's Pershing. Learn why the world's most sophisticated advisory firms and broker-dealers rely on Pershing to help them improve profitability, create efficiency, attract talent, and manage risk at Pershing.com. Foot Locker says it's going to be furloughing the majority of store employees in the U.S. and Canada, as well as some as in Australia, beginning April 26th. This, of course, because of COVID-19. Alcoa is suspending its quarterly projections on global supply and demand balances for bauxite, alumina, and aluminum, citing uncertainty regarding the COVID-19 pandemic and its effect on the global economy. Alcoa also says an asset review could generate between $500 million and $1 billion in cash by 2021. Also after the bell, Railroad CSX withdrew its forecast. NASDAQ posted record revenue and net income driven by a surge in equities trading. It sees market activity staying elevated amid the coronavirus pandemic, as well as the U.S. presidential election. Bloomberg Television and Radio caught up this morning with Adina Friedman, who is NASDAQ's president and CEO.
The year started off very strong across all of our businesses. As we got into March, our trading business did handle a lot of volumes, a big volume increase. And the other businesses, because they're generally recurring in nature, continued to move down the track. I think that the one thing that is clear is that the IPO environment has slowed down considerably.
After earnings, Kimberly-Clark did advance today. Kimberly-Clark up by 2.4%. This on global stockpiling of its Scott bath tissue, Kleenex, Viva paper towels, and other consumer goods. AT&T posted a 4.5%